to order for the October 4th meeting. Supervisor Seep.
Okay, then we'll have to wait for Supervisor Luck to come in, and then Sean.
I'll give him a few minutes yet. Hold your horses. Numbers. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. Was there proof of notification?
Close to Mr. Chair.
And we have a 15-point agenda. Can I have a motion to approve? By Luck, second by Carroll. All those in
Mr.
favor?
Chair, recommend it be approved with recognition that item 6C says response from public safety. That should be response from public works, and as indicated with the supporting material. But just to be safe, I would recommend that with that, when we hit that item, that we just engage in discussion and take no action with it.
We'll probably not take action then. And then we are going to change the order here a bit. We're going to have the Pine Valley item first, handbook changes, personnel reports, and then get back to directive resolutions in ad hoc committee. So anyway, we had a motion and a motion second to agenda approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Previous minutes, I'll declare those approved as published unless someone is screaming in my ear if they don't like it. Okay, approved as published. Takes us down to Pine Valley items, discussion and possible action on outside shelter project. And Tom Rislow, the director, Pine Valley, is here with us.
Sure, Sean. He didn't answer that vote.
Okay, Sean, are you still with us?
I sure am.
Okay, did you vote aye on the last vote?
I did.
Okay. Melissa didn't hear you, so. Okay, Tom, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. This shelter was something that we didn't think we needed to bring because we weren't expending any public funds, but corporate counsel recommended we bring it just because it exceeds the $50,000 under Rule 14. I did pass a recommendation from corporate counsel on to Supervisor Murphy to perhaps bring this up with rules for the future for whether or not such things need to come before the committee. It's before you. I hope that you've read through it. I'll answer questions about it. We were fortunate. We applied for 2 different grants. Each got $20,000 from. There's been fundraising internally. And then we're digging up an old fund that's been sitting there for 38 years. A nice donation from a well-meaning lady a long time ago, Lillian Cadell Fogo.
Can you tell us a little bit about the shelter, Tom, and what its purpose and design will be?
The original grant request was to the Department of Health Services, which put out monies available to address COVID-19 safety, and we had no covered outside visiting area on the campus. And so the intent was to develop a shelter for that purpose, to have a COVID safe area. And eventually then that came to be developed into this 24 by 40 foot shelter.
Make the motion to approve.
Well, we have a motion to approve the proposed shelter at Pine Valley. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Carol. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. Build away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion and possible action on proposed handbook changes. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for approval of the changes in the handbook. We had a meeting on this on September 6th where we did entertain several different changes. These are additional ones that have been added to that prior to taking it to the county board. The recommendations that you'll see on here includes an insert policy of cover. We deleted some redundant words on pages 5 and 6. Pages 9, 10, and 13, we added effective dates. We did an update to Pine Valley total on page 11. Page 14 to add a no retroactive language, which employees will get vacation payout, and add Pine Valley addendum language. And page 22, we added 11 back into the modified paragraph, and we'll review those. We'll go through the documents so you can see the track changes and markups here. But that is the overall gist of it. So kind of cruising through the top here. The first element, we're looking to put in our policy cover, and this is in compliance with our policy on policy, or our establishment policy. It kind of lists out some of the more, it's geeky is what it is. It's more geekier stuff on policy capture and all the different references and points and the authorities of where we get the ability to make these types of decisions, and then the culmination of many different resolutions that have kind of went and back in some of the changes in the items that are in it. With this, though, you're also going to see then it has the sponsoring committee, board, and commission designated as the Finance and Personnel Standing Committee. And this becomes important because when we set up the establishment policy, we set on there that the sponsoring committee has authority of that policy to make different changes with it unless specified by the county board. One of the specifications, though, that you'll see applies in the where is it at here? Investment committee. We have language in the policy that specifies it on paragraph. Oh, I just saw it here. If you're looking down on page, it'll be page 5. How do I say which paragraph it is here where it talks on? The bottom paragraph of page 5. So some of the specifications are put into the actual policy here. The Finance and Personnel Committee shall have final authority over all matters set forth in this handbook, except that the Finance and Personnel Committee shall make recommendations to the county board as to all matters relating to salary levels, position reclassifications, and the creation or elimination of positions, the final decision on which shall be made by the county board. And this same language that you see in this paragraph here is going to be carried over into the authority, authorization, and compensation policy. So this body will have ability to make changes outside of the specifications listed. The other main impact that I want to bring to your attention on this is we did, as we talked about at the last meeting, we went forward and brought forward a new schedule on vacation time, but there were two things that were not added into the language that were discussed throughout the process that needed to be added. And those two things are including the language that current employees will experience these new accruals upon their next anniversary date. There will be no retroactive issue of vacation days based on the new schedule. So that means when we enter into the new year and this becomes effective, if Clint would now move up into a different bracket of accrual, but his anniversary date was back in October, he's not going to be able to go back and get that accrual added on to it. It'll be effective when he hits his next anniversary date in October. The other item that we put in there too is that employees reaching their 15-year service mark will be the ones that will be entitled then to that payment of 1 week if they reach their anniversary date and they have not been paid out. So those are the two things that have been discussed through the process that were added back in. And then we have on there for the Pine Valley addendum that was added. I think that's kind of the gist of it, Cheryl. Am I missing any other main components that need to be added? And Teresa have a question? Correct. We have the language in there that references Pine Valley addendum, I believe, right, Cheryl, right? Here.
So we're having a discussion on the Pine Valley addendum. Tom Rislow had a question.
Yeah, we have it on there as Pine Valley, see addendum for vacation schedule.
So department heads have seen this and are comfortable with these changes?
They have been pushed out the information through department meetings. Their level of comfort is
Well,
on a
yeah,
schedule overall. It does come
they're
to
not sitting here.
well, I mean,
So they don't approve?
over it all, it becomes to an added level of benefit that's added to help us recruit and retain. But certainly with these two things added on there, it kind of whittles back on when employees are going to experience it, when it's implemented. And the other aspect of it is too is it was intended that that payout be a way to impact our longevity employees to allow them to get the 1 week payout of that. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Did you have another thing you wanted to mention?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Carroll.
um, maybe it's a minor thing. I'm just trying to understand the table of contents where the definitions were removed, or what's going on with the page numbering.
So when you're running in the change mode or the draft mode, it messes with the table of content, because the table of content then thinks there should be data, but it's deleted. So as soon as it's updated, those errors will all go away.
So Administrator Langrick, are those the only changes for today, or addendums or additions?
They are, yep.
Additions.
And then when we bring the resolution forward, then it will capture then the changes we had talked about last month, and they'll be brought to the October meeting.
Okay, you've heard the recommended language. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, Luck moves and David Turk seconds. How about that?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We'll be seeing these again at the board meeting. Discussion and possible action on classification, compensation, and authorization. Mr. Langrick.
So, Mr. Chair, this one, much like the handbook one, we're trying to keep consistent running together, and this is trying to capture our different movements with our several different elements. One, the position changes that we did in conjunction with this year's budget. Let me pull it up. There we are. Well, the list of it is, all the changes are broken down here in the different background for the actual elements, but in broad strokes, the changes that you're looking at today are the impact on the authorizations for reclassifications that kind of were approved through the budget process. The other element in it is a confirmation of different authorities with that. Again, it kind of works in the same type of a rules, is that we have the cover sheet with this body identified as the authority to make changes to it, but with the specifications of reclassifications and authorization amounts and many of the elements that are still going to require county board authority. And that'll be a conversation for you folks to have on your comfort level of if you want to propose those changes brought down to a finance and personnel level, or if you want to have continued resolution to push that to the county board. My perspective on it was in the nature of us going through these financial changes and positions and such being kind of a little bit more of a sensitive topic with the changes at hand, to leave it going to the county board for transparency's sake. But like with all of our policies, it's that where's your comfort? How much do you want going to the board versus how much do you want to take care of at a committee level? The other elements on it then is it does reflect the wage schedule changes, the 5% for the general wage schedule and the 5% for Pine Valley. With the caveat that Pine Valley then is through the language of the policy allowed to advance another step up, and it has the language changes that correspond with that. So going through it. So this is the language that kind of correlates then for what you saw with the county handbook to keep it consistent. The Finance and Personnel Committee shall have final authority over all matters set forth in this policy, except for the Finance and Personnel Committee shall make recommendations to the county board as to all matters relating to salary levels, position reclassifications, and creation or elimination of positions. The final decision on which shall be made by the county board. The other elements then that you'll see some major revisions on, impact in some of the areas as with Pine Valley, you'll see on page 7, you'll see the changes in the numbers for the steps. We made many changes throughout it in regards to the adding the standing Committee language, as there was a name change with the Finance and Personnel Committee to Finance and Personnel Standing Committee. The other main change is in page 8, a reclassification of full-time, part-time benefited and part-time unbenefited. And these changes in here put us kind of more in step with the Affordable Care Act for offering insurance. So these are what we would consider as a full-time, and then the part-times. Now do keep in mind though, with all of our, how it impacts with our benefits, each benefit for the most part has its own benefit plan yet. We're trying to get them lined up, but some of them we can't quite line up because it depends on many different factors. Health insurance being tied to WRS. WRS has a kind of a slide rule on different eligibilities based on when you first became eligible, etc. But that is the intent here. Are there other main changes that I need to bring to their attention, Cheryl? Okay, and then you'll see in the back, then we have our updated staffing authorization tables, beginning on page 17. And then past that, then you'll see the actual wage and compensation tables running out through the end. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions, comments? Mr. Carroll?
The green font on page 12, I assume that's just supposed to be red.
Just 1 second, sir.
The green font is a moved section, so it was actually moved from the paragraph below up. So green is cut and paste.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then to forward this to the board meeting. Do I have a motion? I'm looking at my screen.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. Mr. Murphy Lopez, seconds.
I'll second it for discussion.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so do you mind if I ask a couple of questions?
Let's have discussion.
Great. So on the staff authorization table, I know that the staff authorization table I was using previously had, let's see, it was something like 65 employees for HHS and 10 contract employees for a total of 75 full-time and contract employees. Now I see it's up to 81. Can you talk a little bit about why there are 6 additional employees at HHS?
Okay, thank you.
They had several contracted through Southwest Workforce Development, I believe it was, that they could not fill. So they're putting them on an in-house staffing instead of contracted. So the contracted probably went down when the full-timers went up.
That doesn't answer my question because the total number has gone up. So I'm talking internal full-time and external contract. The old total was 75 total, and now the total is 81.
Mr. Murphy Lopez, I think Tricia Clements is on. Can I call on you, Ms. Clements, to comment?
Yeah, I was just taking a look at that. I can kind of peek through and try to figure out those numbers and let you know in just a minute, okay?
Fine. Maybe we can, do you have another question?
Yeah.
Sean?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my other question was about Pine Valley. So the step locations, are those, is this another way of saying that we were allowing Pine Valley to have a 7% increase next year instead of 5%?
Tom's saying yes. If you have further follow-up, I'll ask him to come to a mic.
Nope, that's what I needed to understand if that was wrapped in here or
Okay.
not. So that helps.
Chris?
Thank you.
Tricia, do you have an answer to Sean? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I'm just trying to count through how these were set up. So I am looking at this right now.
Does anyone else have a question or concern besides Sean?
I do believe when I look at this, that there are some positions that have been long-term vacancies that we are not advertising to fill, but they are still listed as employees.
But Sean, does that answer make sense to you?
I don't want to be adding employees at this moment. So,
Right.
so no.
That's right, nor, I don't think any of us want to add employees at this moment, so. Administrator Langrick, can you shed more light on this?
Not at the present. I think probably the best thing we can do is we can take it back and scrub it again, and make sure that we're figuring out where the misconnect happened on the numbers here, and then we can bring it back to you in November. The impact on it, if we still take action on it in a December county board meeting, will be okay, because it's in context of establishing what the wage schedules would be for January. And it also then would reflect reclassifications, which would be the next item. So we can take this back and scrub it and bring it back to you folks.
All right, the motion was made by Ms. Luck, Mr. Carroll, and seconded by Sean. Do either of you have objections, then delaying action on your motion until next meeting?
We have to table it?
Or we
Postpone?
could
Postpone?
table it, I guess.
What's the right procedure?
Postponing maybe.
So
Well,
withdraw my
wait for the
motion?
answer to
Can I
that.
do that?
Let's have a motion then to table until the next meeting.
I'll make a motion to postpone until staff
Postpone, thank you, Sean.
is ready to return.
And Melissa seconds that motion. All those in favor of postponing action till we get further clarification, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Administrator Langrick, under that item?
Our next item in combination with that would be the reclassifications that you'll see in item number 11A in your folder. And these are the reclassifications that were brought forward with the budget process. The resolution is in there. It has the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 proposals that were recommended through our consultants, Carlson Detman, for changes.
Okay, anything glaring here that looks pretty cut and dried, but
So was the sheriff's department at a grade F, and so it's just remaining at grade F?
It was, my understanding is, was at F. They recommended keeping it at F, but did concur with changing the name of the position to administrative assistant.
Okay.
and Carlson Detman has reviewed this, and this is their recommendation, so I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Luck. The records will show that you probably made 95% of the motions today because you're sitting here. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I'll take a second from.
I'll second. Discussion, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mr.
And that was Sean who said that? David, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion by Luck, second by Turk. And further discussion? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of these?
Yeah,
reclassifications?
discussion, Mr. Chair. This is Supervisor
Yes, go
Gotchel.
ahead. Yes, Mr. Gotchel, yes.
So I appreciate these grades being listed. Or what is the change? Could someone just walk me through high level what the changes are here?
Thank you for that question, and I think Cheryl or Clint can answer that.
I can share the job descriptions, but I don't think the job descriptions show the change.
You mean from the current classification, Supervisor Gotchel? Is that what you're after?
Yeah, that's what I'm after. Yes.
Sure. Okay, I've got Administrator Rizlo here can share the two with Pine Valley. Confident I've got the MIS one, and we can talk if Trish is on. She'll be able to help us with the other ones, I believe.
Hey, Tom Rizlo, please respond.
The clinical reimbursement coordinator was a move up one grade, and it was a new position, and it was previously approved by this committee. And the RA, the resident assistant position, was a move down in grade. That was previously ran past this committee, and that was approved by Carlson Detman as well.
Thank you, Tom.
Does that help, Supervisor Gotchel?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
The MIS administrator position, I believe, is a 2-grade movement up in context of added duties, radio tower projects being one of them, etc. The sheriff's position, as we talked about, remains at a grade F with a title change. And I think, Trish, if you're on, if you can help describe the changes in the behavioral health services, child, youth, and services positions.
The Adult Protective Service social worker and the Child and Youth Services case manager, those both have gone up one grade to be more comparable to what it is that they're doing. Our mental health case manager, those were 3 mental health therapist positions, and they have been downgraded because they no longer require a master's degree and are just bachelor level positions.
Does this cover what you had in mind, Supervisor Gotchel?
It does. Follow-up question, if I may. So when we, or when individual committees make a decision to move forward with a reassessment from Carlson Detman, is there an official trigger for that, or is it just kind of an ad hoc? Here's the situation that we have, and bring it forward to this committee or other committees. I guess I don't know.
That's
Can you answer that, Administrator Lynn?
I can. That's actually part of the reclassification authorization and compensation policy that we had tabled for next week, or I'm sorry, next month, includes in there a procedure for bringing forward reclassifications on page 9 and 10.
As usual, you're a step ahead of where I was going, Supervisor Langrick. So, or Administrator Langrick, excuse me. So I'm good. Thank you.
Doesn't happen often, so I'm going to probably relish in it today. So,
Supervisor Gotchel, though, I think I know it, and I agree with you that this has kind of been left up to the appropriate director, administrator, whatever, of the specific department to kind of push these kinds of reviews to Detman and then bring them to us for resolution. So I think a more formal, at least procedural change is probably necessary. I agree. Is that a question? That's a statement.
correct. We do, and we're looking to update it to keep it in context. And kind of to walk you through it. So it's initiated by the department heads, and so the department head, of course, has to be in agreement with this. It comes through an administrator or a supervisory committee when the department head is an elected official. The request then involves, if it involves an amendment to a pay grade assignment or an FLSA compensation or FLSA status, it goes off to a Carlson Detman. Then the account administrator or supervisory committee may take action then to recommend the reclassification to Finance and Personnel Standing Committee. With recommendations then from the administrator of the Standing Committee, the departments will present a completed reclassification supporting document to be presented to Finance and Personnel Committee. Finance and Personnel Committee may recommend a resolution to the county board, and then any reclassification changes that are approved will be implemented on the first day of the first full pay period of the new budget year, unless otherwise specifically requested by the department or approved through the county administrator, Finance and Personnel Standing Committee, or county board. So that's kind of the broad strokes on how it works, Supervisor Gotchel.
Okay, we've heard the request for reclassification. Can I have a motion, please, to approve those?
Mr. Chair, this is Sean. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy Lopez. Do I have a second?
I believe Melissa already made a motion.
Yeah, Cheryl, right?
Oh, that's right. And then we got into discussion.
Right.
Sorry.
Yep.
So long ago, I forgot. Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve these changes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we approved them. Can we just go ahead with number 10, Clint, or?
We did 10. 10 will be brought back to you next month, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me.
12 and 13, do you
Yeah,
want
12 and
to do
13.
those? Sure.
Yeah.
So there's two items inside your folder that you'll see, items number 12A and 12B. It was asked to bring these forward, to discuss them, to bring them to your knowledge. We have legal advisory from Wisconsin Counties Association from Atolis Law. They're bringing it to our attention as many counties are in the same type of financial constraints and looking for any and all different levers that can be pulled to help with the financial situations. One of them then is a reference to state statute, namely down to state statute 67.04 subparagraph 5. And in that, you can see that counties are authorized to take out municipal bonds or notes that can be issued for specific purposes. One of those outlined in this statute is to comply with court order or judgments, to provide liability insurance, property insurance, risk management services. And the other one then is to pay unfunded prior service liability contributions to Wisconsin retirement system. And so two of these items regarding the court order and judgment and insurance, you've seen those kind of talked about previous finance and personnel committee, as well as you will see that in HHS potentially as well as an option to you. What this allows you to do is to displace what we've historically kind of seen as operation expenses and to put that into short-term notes to borrow for it. So this is something that is being discussed amongst all different counties. It's a way to increase a revenue flow, but you have to be very conscientious that it impacts your tax base. The other part of it, of course, is because it's a bonding and going against, for a borrowing purposes, it's going to require 3/4 votes to do those types of actions. As a follow-up on this too, I believe Supervisor Murphy Lopez inquired at our last county board meeting on a technique of doing like a one-day note where you're selling your notes and then you're kind of paying it off on the same type of a day to minimize any and all types of interest that might be associated with it. I actually talked in one of the regional meetings that was on Monday with a collection of administrators, and there is a county that plans on kind of doing that in specifics on trying to help with manage their risk for their placement costs with adult placement and with child placements. And what he's entertaining is to try to do a one-day note method, but trying to do it in the rear. So they would keep track in a given year of their financial impacts for judgments and court order types of expenses. They get to the end of the year, they issue a one-day type of a note, provided that the county board goes along with it, pay it that same day, then they're able to put it on the tax base for the next year and kind of pay themselves, in the rear, if you will. So they'll incur the expenses next year, get the funds, pay yourself back for the impacts on your general levy fund. So these are not the most the best business in trying to operate operationally when you're almost kind of engaging in ways to circumvent around operational expenses by using debt service levy. But I don't have to tell you folks, the way we're getting pressed against the ceiling, options like this become more enticing in efforts to try to continue delivering services. Mr. Chair.
Well, I think I disagree a little bit on that. It's a way around it. I think that it actually puts the matter before all of the supervisors, and it makes them notice and realize that this is going to go on the tax. It's going to go on the levy. So,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carroll.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a legal opinion, and it sounds like the statutes would cover us, but I get the impression no one's actually done it yet, but everybody's getting ready to. Do we know what that stance is?
There was, I think that was in context of there might have been one judgment on it. I lost track. I'll have to check back with my notes, but the overall impression is that for most of it, it's not been, there's not a lot of case law of knowing what is what and what is not. How it would arrive in a decision is if there was a Supreme Court opinion or the other element is if you did it and your taxpayers, it would be taxpayers of Richland County decided that they didn't like that and they organized and brought forward a litigation suit based on XYZ types of reasons. I think I don't know of any on here. I think what I might be thinking of is in context more of one of the levy exemptions for ambulance, I think is what I'm thinking of. So I'll continue asking on this one, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't think there's a whole lot of case law that's going to say where all those lines are.
Yeah. And then further, if I'm reading this, this would enable us to put 50,000 on debt service and be able to improve our budget by that amount.
In context of the proposals underneath item number 6 on the top, when we were talking about different mechanisms, again, to freeing up operational space, yes, that's looking at trying to do a short-term note like this, put $50,000 of workers' comp, property, and liability insurance on a note system. Does that answer your question, Supervisor?
Yes.
Carroll?
Thank you. All right, number 13. A report on the fee schedule changes for WISVote data entry services.
Okay, it is here, and I will defer to Clerk Kalish if he is on and available.
Clerk
I'm
Kalish,
here.
you're with us. Go ahead.
Okay, so as the agenda cover item says, historically the county has shouldered the burden of completing their required WISVote data entry duties at no charge for all townships and villages after each election. So the city manages their own. With the reorganization of the county clerk's office, originally having 4 people to do these duties, now to have 2. The idea of doing this at no charge could and should no longer be done. Additionally, the data entry that the county has been doing at no cost and shouldering a lot of the responsibility for is actually a statutory duty of each municipality, and specifically the clerk, not at all the county. So as we were looking at the budget going ahead for 2023, and as I was looking at my core budget and trying to work, do what I can with what we have available, because the county clerk's office is not meant to be a revenue generating office. One way in which I can help my budget and obviously the county as a whole is to then charge services for doing these duties that we've never had to statutorily be responsible for. And one of those duties is the WISVote duty. So I won't go into an immense amount of detail on WISVote, what it is, but it's basically all of the electronic work that goes into an election. So voter participation, absentee tracking, setting up elections. It's really a whole gamut of things that each municipality is required to do. So in order to get a handle or get a feel of what other municipalities or counties were doing with this, I did reach out to 12 other counties that had a population of plus or minus 2,000 compared to our county. And for those of you that were in my budget presentation from the county clerk's perspective, I did learn that there was one other county that I spoke with that does this for absolutely free. Every other county charges. And the response I was receiving from fellow county clerks was basic astonishment that the county was doing this at no cost to all the municipalities, because every other county except the one that I talked to, charge for these services. So what I did, which you have in front of you, is taking the fee schedules that other individuals have that perform these services that are like populations and composition, also sitting down and determining the length of time it takes us to perform all the duties for each of these individual elections, came up with a fee schedule that is based on the number of registered voters within a population. So Clint, if you can scroll down to that fee schedule. So right there. So for 2023, I looked every July. My thought is I will look at the number of registered voters, and depending on what a municipality has for that number of registered voters, as of July, that's what we would set the 2020, the following year's rates for. Um, Obviously, this may change from here and there, but if you look at the annual fee for this, it's not a ton. I have estimated in the 2023 proposed budget that it could produce up to $7,550 in revenue for the clerk's office. Bear in mind that incoming expected revenue will and can change as individuals begin to learn to do this process themselves, as again they are statutorily required to do. So I have drafted this fee schedule. I've also drafted the MOU that the county clerk's office would prepare every on an annual basis with municipalities. Attorney Wendell has reviewed this. And so I would prepare this and send this out. And Clint and I thought it was obviously a good idea to bring it to you folks to let you review that and to make you aware of the fee schedule, as this is, how I would like to move forward with WISVOTE data entry services. The townships that I have spoken with were not surprised by this, and were receptive to either two options. Municipalities will have the option to assume the WISVOTE duties themselves, as they are, again, statutorily required to do so, or they can choose to contract with our office to continually do all of the data entry services that we have been doing and have done in the past. So does anyone have any questions about what you have before you?
Clerk Kalish,
Yes.
I have a question or an observation, concern perhaps. Does this actually charging for this service, does it place the county in any extra level of liability should something go wrong with the vote?
Yeah, well, so this is the data entry portion of this. So we, as the provider for these services, will only be able to do the job to the best of our ability, to the level of degree in which the quality of information we're received to do the data entry is given to us. And I did, if you see, there's a section on there called quality of information. If we do not receive the information to the letter of the law that we need to do to perform the duties within this MOU, we simply won't do them. And I've been doing that now. So, when we do this, and Corp, I don't know if Attorney Wendell's on, but we are assuming accurate entry of this of these duties. And truth be told, that's part of the reason why I think we need to have an MOU in place with municipalities, because we're assuming some responsibility in this, and with the intense amount of scrutiny that on our elections. I do feel the county clerks that I've spoken with, and I really try to speak to the veteran ones when I talk to these folks, because they have the most education and background and knowledge of this. A lot of counties are, getting away from doing these things because this is not something that is a county duty, regardless of whether you can draw revenue from it or not. So there is a long answer, sorry, but yeah, we're assuming a little bit of responsibility for the accuracy of the data entry. Not necessarily of the elections. Elections are still administered at the local level. We would just be performing the data entry services required of the election. However, the integrity of an election still falls within the municipality. And then we obviously have a canvas countywide that we review it as a county and certify the results as a county. So a little perhaps, but to the extent of that, I would defer to Attorney Wendell to explain that.
Mike, did you have any comment? Attorney Wendell? Okay, we're not sure he's on. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's on.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
So first, I just want to thank the clerk for doing this. I think, obviously he did a lot of research, and this is the type of thing that we've got to be doing more of, and it's not necessarily fun to deliver the news to municipalities, I'm sure, but I'm sure they'll understand the situation we're in. I hope they will, at least. I'm wondering if it's possible to tell the municipalities, either if it's in the resolution or just some sort of communication with them about how rare it is for a county to provide these services to municipalities. I don't want them to think, oh, the county's out of money, so now they're hunting around for it. And that's all. They're just out to get money from us. I would like them to know that it's very rare that a county would do this, like the clerk's research showed up.
Supervisor Murphy Lopez, I actually did that. I held a training election with all the clerks who were able to come last Thursday, September 29th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., in which I reviewed all of the I do this with them after every election, so this way I can do a little more as the county clerk. I'm certainly not required to do that, but because these elections are a team effort, and I really do want them to do well, because if they do well, we do well as a county. I did review all of this with them. I went over the MOU with them. I sent them home with a copy and also noted that, these MOUs would be brought to finance and personnel today, and that it is still part of the formal budget approval of the county, so that, the MOU they had before them and any fees could potentially change until the budget was adopted on October 25th. But because they're in the process of, doing their budgets, I felt they needed it. I waited to give it to them as long as I could before it would cause budgetary problems. But Supervisor Murphy Lopez, I did explain to them why we're doing this, what other counties do, and then also assured them that there are several training opportunities at which they'll have at their fingertips, and they always have me as a source to call. So I think they received this well. Like I said, they understood why. And for those that want to do it themselves, they feel confident they can. And for those that don't, they were okay with paying a fee and understood why we're doing it. So I think I have that covered.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the fee schedule and the MOU, and having the resolution forwarded to the county board if that's needed.
Okay, motion by Murphy Lopez to approve the request. Do I have a second?
Circle second.
Kirk seconds. Thank you. It's good to choose people from the board, as it were. All those in favor of the proposal from Clerk Cayley signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we've approved the process. Thank you. I guess that can take us back then, Clint, to number 5. Discussion and possible action on response to resolution 2206 or 96.
And so this is coming back to you too.
2296.
Previously spoke on this last month. It's in context of the different changes and options as in regards to that statute as applies to the Finance and Personnel Committee. The language on there again is specified then regarding services provided through the county administrator, county clerk, county treasurer, county board, and ancillary budgets. Develop a recommended list of proposed projected levy reductions in comparing to the 2022 budget of $122,000 in 2024, $243,000 in 2025, $299,000 in 2026, $383,000 in 2027, including but not limited to the lines that were put forward in the financial plan. So with that, if you do remember, we did have a list that was presented to you folks last week. I have the same list for you today. I do have, it was asked though, what are the totals, I believe we wanted to know, of what was proposed by resolution. And with that, the total amount proposed by resolution for the total years amounts to $1 million. For individual years, it's 158,000 essentially the first year, 226 the second year, 286 the following year, and 371 the following year. Do keep in mind though that we offered a couple solutions on here a little bit beyond what the requirements were by the language, in anticipation that other committees might have struggles as well. That also being said, though, some of the reductions in levy, though, are, as annotated, are that kind of displacements often to short-term borrowing. So I will leave it at that as a kind of a tee up and turn it over to yourself, Mr. Chair, for discussion and actions.
Well, thank you. It's there before us. Could I have some comments, please? What do you want to do?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
a
Mr.
couple
Carroll.
questions. The the one item here where they're considering ending our relationship with Southwest Regional Planning. I see that one, but we in our documents for this meeting, there's a detailed response from RED board, but I don't see that even listed on here as a possible cut.
It was not addressed directly in a resolution like it was to RED. It fell into kind of financial controls of us being another budget item. At the same time, I can say, while the cuts have to come from someplace, I know at the same time we're entering with Southwest Regional Planning this coming year, of which we're still partners next year, and having them added help with sorting out our opioid abatement funds that are coming back to us. And also through, as you know, through land and zoning, we're actually looking to potentially entertain a bid for them to perform GIS work for us. So those are consideration points that we think need to carry, and that's something that we want to act on.
Ms. Luck, I'm going to ask you to comment. Go beyond the things that Clint mentioned.
Mr. Chair, we can't hear anything online in case she's still speaking.
No, she's.
Sorry, I thought my
mumbling,
mic was
but
on.
she's
Can you hear me now?
shaking.
Can you hear me now, Sean?
Yep, loud and clear
My-
now.
My mic wasn't on,
And we're
sorry.
discussing, somehow we segued into Southwest Regional Planning. Clint gave us a couple things that we've got ongoing with them. I asked Melissa because she is,
Do you want me to comment on the Southwest Regional Planning
I'm
specifically?
asking you to
Oh,
comment on that
okay.
because you are part of
I am.
the minute, whatever they
Yeah,
call
and
it.
I know that one of the things that they're going to be talking about at the full commission meeting in November is if a county withdraws from the commission, will they still provide contracted services for that county? And I would not say that it's guaranteed that they will continue to provide any kind of services if we part company with them. So that is certainly something that we do need to take into consideration before we officially withdraw.
Yeah.
There would
okay.
be more than just the 17,000. I believe that there may be a plan for them to come and talk to us about what services they are providing to educate and how much money they're bringing into our county. But again, we have to make cuts from somewhere. I get it. So
Just, I had a discussion with Troy Maggie, the director of, and he said, I hear you said it was either us or RED, our Richland Economic Development. I said, well, I think it's probably neither. If, we're gonna make all the cuts we can, so that's under consideration. Clint, you talked about some contracted services, both of which are important. I don't like running without these people, I'll tell you that. Trying to run the county.
Mr. Chair, I have some comments, but they're a little more general about some bigger ticket items.
Go ahead, Mr. Murphy Lopez.
So at our last meeting, I thought the general consensus was that there was kind of some concern that we weren't moving forward, like we were just kind of, sticking with the status quo with this proposal for cuts here. And one of the things I was hoping is that we could get a little bit better understanding of how HR and finance works in these other counties that are kind of like ours, to see, what we can do to get an HR director and a finance director. I was reminded when I was at the HHS and Veterans Committee earlier this week or late last week that they have their own HR folks over there. And we have this really dispersed model right now. And I just really agreed. I think it was Supervisor Williamson that said it last time. It just doesn't feel like we're moving forward with this proposal. I don't see that we're really going anywhere. That's how I feel.
Thank you. Anyone want to comment on that? Sean, I think it's a question of, if you don't have the funds, you can't do it. And a lot of the things that are itemized for drop-in are part and parcel of our vision for the county board and the administration going forward. So,
Well, if I can get into a little more specifics here, we have a payroll and benefits specialist under the administrator. We also have payroll folks and I don't quite know how this works because I'm not here every day, but we have payroll folks, I'm assuming, in Pine Valley and Highway and HHS. How many payroll folks do we have at the county? How many payroll folks do counties of similar size with similar numbers of employees have? Can we be looking for efficiencies? That's the type of place I'm going with this. Same thing with finance. We've got this position in the administrator's office that handles finance stuff already. Well, we have finance people in those other departments too. Are we making more work for ourselves because we're so decentralized? I'm not hearing any discussion on that. And I think this is the moment for us to really be thinking out of the box, thinking big picture, learning about other counties. And that's what I mean. I don't see that we're really doing that.
okay, thank you. Teresa, did you have a comment? Teresa from Pine Valley? Trying to get the mic on.
At the base, where it narrows. On the mic, yep.
I can speak to, this is Therese from Pine Valley. I can speak to the payroll part. We do have an accounts payable payroll clerk, and it's more than just payroll that she does. There's also keeping track of all the employees' accruals. With our staffing challenges, payroll has gotten more complicated than ever. So she's sending an interface file over to Tammy, and then Tammy goes from there and works her magic. But when we're sending over the payroll, that way Tammy's not having to figure out people's different hourly rates. They're different if it's comp time or overtime paid. And then, of course, this person also does the accounts payable. So she's in charge of getting the invoices. And we've offered before that, we could run the checks at our office, because when they're sent over, it's ready to go also. We got it in our GLs that we need it to go into, which feeds into our financials. So I don't feel like there's any downtime with this person doing the several different jobs that she does.
Thank you. We don't have anyone here from those other departments that you mentioned, Sean.
Trisha's on.
Tricia's on, that's right.
Have we,
Mr.
Mr. Chair, have
Payable.
we looked at other counties to see how they do this? Have we gotten out of our own bubble?
You're questioning me to answer that? I don't know.
No, I mean, we can spend all day listening to everyone explain what they do, but until we see and compare our model of HR and finance to other counties, I don't think we're going to get anywhere.
Yeah, and I don't think that we're prepared to answer that right now because we haven't made that kind of research. It hasn't been done.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Seep, go ahead.
Yes, I, if I might make a comment, I certainly can appreciate uh, Sean's goal of searching for more efficiencies in HR and finance. Those are very, in my view, very complex entities. There's quite a difference between the Pine Valley and Highway, for example, and Health and Human Services. And they, I think, require a certain amount of specialized and particular expertise because of the nature of each of those businesses. I believe that John's issue is very important, but I think it's so complex that it's going to take thoughtfulness and research over an extended period of time, perhaps a year, to get a handle on this question. It certainly isn't something that we as board members can have the expertise to put together in 1 or 2 or 3 meetings. I think we need perhaps even some outside expertise to help us analyze the efficiency of these systems. Mr. Langrick may have a comment on that, but I don't think there's a simple answer to this. I think it's complex. I think we have to have careful and thoughtful study of these questions. Perhaps there can be some consolidation and combination of functions into one place, but you're going to need more people in that one place. That's for damn sure, because they're very, very complex. Both Highway, Pine Valley, and Health and Human Services are all very different animals, and I will leave it at that. But I think I recognize Sean's goal here, and I think it's a very worthy goal, and I think every good administrator would from these departments, these 3 departments would agree that it's a worthy goal. But I think they would also agree that it requires enough time to give it adequate research and so that it can bring forth a clear understanding of where we're going with this, what our problem is, and how we can solve it, if there is a problem. Maybe the status quo is the way to go, and maybe it's not. Maybe it needs to be turned upside down and totally revised. We do not have the data or the information to quickly make a decision on this, and that's my view. And I may be off base, and I'm sorry to intrude on your meeting.
Thank you for intruding. I think you're right on the target, Don. And one could argue that the elimination of the planning that the administrator was doing and recommendations from our vision for the county, eliminating a personnel director, eliminating a finance officer. If you eliminate them or if you incorporate them into the future, there should be corresponding savings overall. I mean, there should be savings, for instance, at Pine Valley. There should be savings at Health and Human Services. There should be savings at the county shop because some of their work is being taken away and consolidated administratively.
Mr. Chair.
I don't know if we're ready to answer that question, Sean. Go ahead. David, go ahead.
Thank you. I would tend to agree with Sean's analysis of intent that this is an important initiative for us to consider, but I think it's so important it should be its own initiative and not get wrapped up in this budget crisis type initiative that we're working on now, trying to meet the goals of the resolutions for addressing our present financial crisis. I think it is important enough to be its own initiative, and we could sort out the finances as part of that initiative. As you pointed out, Mr. Chair, yeah, there would be savings elsewhere to offset any additional expenses. By making the changes outlined here, I think we're just saying, okay, we're not building it into the budget as an additional expense at this time. If we're going to make it happen, it will have to have corresponding offsets elsewhere to become a reality.
Right, thank you. Ms. Luck.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Yeah, my mic keeps going off. So I think what we do have to balance the budget. And according to the numbers that we're looking at in 2024, we have to make some significant changes in order to balance that budget. That doesn't give us, yes, that gives us until this time next year, but that's a lot to figure out in a year. The struggle that I'm having in looking at these piecemeal is that I think that we are going to have to make some very difficult choices. And until I see all of the awful choices in front of me, I don't know how to prioritize whether Southwest Regional Planning or the Red Board is important if I'm going to be comparing it to losing multiple deputies.
Yep.
But sorry, that was loud. But I also think that Sean is correct. I think that if we're going to have to make these hard choices, we are going to have to. I know that you think your position is important at Pine Valley. I know at Highway they think that that accounts payable specialist person is important and that only they can do it. But we're not going to have a choice. We're going to have to figure out ways to consolidate some of these. And so what I would like to see is, if there's a way for our department heads to look at possible ways that those positions could potentially be combined so that we find savings that make sense instead of just having to cut things that we don't really want to cut. But it's got to come from somewhere. We have to fill the budget gap, and the numbers aren't getting smaller. So that's my piece.
Jennifer Lau.
So this is Jennifer Lau. I'm the Register and Probate, the Judicial Assistant, and the Juvenile Clerk. And I usually don't speak up a lot at meetings, but I feel compelled to express a lot of frustration, mainly because I feel like I am getting mixed messages. So earlier in this meeting, you passed reclassifications that will impact 2024, 25, 26, and 27. Every time you make a vote at this committee, it affects those years. Then, later this week, I will come to the Public Safety Committee meeting, and you are asking me to cut a 2-person department, $24,000. That's 2 people with basically 3 categories: salaries, running the office, and attorney fees. Wisconsin state statutes mandate certain attorneys be appointed for children, people that are going to be going under guardianship, and people that don't have the education or have a diminished ability to represent themselves. So to me, it is very frustrating to sit here and see some of these things passed and then be asked to cut our department. I feel like we have made cuts over the last 7 to 10 years, continually, not taking raises, cutting back, doing without. Everyone probably goes without all of their needs being met at all different levels. So every time you make a vote at a committee level, at personnel and finance, and at the county board level, I'm just asking you to consider what is the best interest of this county as a whole. Because I feel like at the committee a department head makes a recommendation, it goes to the committee. The committee doesn't want to say no, so they say yes. Then it goes to personnel and finance. They say, well, we should do what the committee recommended because that's what they say. So then it doesn't stop here, and then it gets to the county board because no one wants to say no. And that's how I feel. If you were in a private business, you would have someone at the top looking at the bottom line, making the hard decisions. This is a different situation. So again, every time you make a vote, consider how it's going to affect 2024, 25, and 26, and 27, and the county as a whole.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, decisions affect people locally. I mean, all politics is local, all administrative changes are local when you get down to it. So it's easy to sit here and say, yeah, we gotta cut this, cut that. But we're gonna approve these changes, and they'll all ultimately cost more money. So
Well, yeah,
I
Mr. Chair,
was thinking, when we decided to hire an administrator, we got help. We established a committee and worked with Todd Romanesco, remember him? He says hi, by the way, I saw him at the county's thing. Is there similar help out there to help us in this I call it a restructuring? Are we missing the boat? Administrator Langrip, do you have any ideas?
I guess I'd like to hear further thoughts on vision on what help are you looking for, of a process or someone to help you make decision on the behalf of your someone, or
Well,
what,
I guess looking at all the things that we've talked about here, we've heard from various departments. Can we consolidate? Can we streamline administration? Are these things that, can you make recommendations? I mean, you've made them, and now but now compared to the budget, we can't proceed with them. So where does that put us? I guess I'm in a quandary.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Seat.
if I just may speak from 30 years in being a CEO of a multi-million-dollar business, it's my view that you have someone running a complex operation in the millions of dollars, Pine Valley, Highway Department, Health and Human Services, each of them very complex operations, and they're certainly not risk averse. I think if you're running one of those businesses, you have to have a numbers person at your side daily. There's constant numbers issues that are before you daily that you have to make decisions about. And I think it would be very disadvantageous to not, for a manager, a director, an administrator, not to have the ability to get those numbers analyses right now as they're needed. It's so complex that you're going to have an extremely well-qualified, multi-talented person to be the either the HR person or the finance manager for those very different and complex operations. I think that is an issue that we need to consider, and I think we need to be very careful. I'm all for a study, a research to look for efficiencies where we can find them, but we have to be careful not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I've said enough.
Administrator Langrip.
what I'm gathering from conversation, if there's to kind of circle back around, if there's a desire and a want to have a full-on type of study on HR staffing and finance staffing, please make that known by motion, second, and action today, and we can engage in doing that. The other element is if there's you want some type of consultant to come in to have somebody else kind of help and evaluate on it, we can certainly look into that. I would caution though that at some point, we're going to have to make decisions on it. And it's going to be up to you folks to decide then exactly kind of what, if you need more data, I can appreciate that. This is not easy. And if you want more data, we can provide more data. But then I would ask then also being committed to, once you get that data, you still have to make a decision on it. They're not comfortable. And I don't envy the position that you're in. So those are kind of the things I'd be looking for today. And the last part of it too is, and I understand efficiencies and I'd like to see us to get efficient as well, but like we've talked about many times through these meetings, this isn't just an exercise in trying to reduce numbers. It's also prioritizing and saying, you know, what do we want to do without or want to do less of? The mindset that we can still have more and pay less is, that's going to be a tall order. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You heard Administrator Langrick suggest that, go ahead, Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, back to the spreadsheet for a bit. Couple of questions. Now, this committee has to respond back to the referendum committee by when?
So that's actually the date for the responses, I believe, to come to finance and personnel, October
right.
31st.
But I mean, including our response.
To yourself, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
So we need to look at this proposed list of cuts, and we need to make a decision. This committee needs to make that decision. So with all the discussion aside, we still have to make a decision on what we have right in front of us. But I also had one specific question back to the possibility of doing the insurance premiums as a borrowing function. It goes up by 50 grand each year. I just wondered how that was determined.
So the mindset with that, Supervisor Carroll, was to incrementally tick that up. So it's not all one big impact on one given year. As you can see it kind of on the bottom, there is your overage on year 2024 is 46,000 that you would in fact kind of be going past. This is if you were to take all the things in consideration here, and of course you have the liberty to say yes or no, or to adjust the other ones on here as you see fit. But it was to kind of approach it at an incremental impact, as to not, you know, wait until the following year when you needed a bunch and then add a whole lot more to that increase on millage rate. That answer your question, Supervisor Carroll?
Right, but then the total, if we were to take that full advantage of that memorandum, what is the total of all our premiums? Is that the 461?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, Administrator Langridge suggested that a motion be made directing him to do research. Two things he asked for. One was do the research, and the second was
if you'd like a study on HR and staffing and come back to you with solutions on some type of modeling, yes, if we could clarify that in a motion, that would be most helpful. The other element is if you're looking for additional consultation in regards to either county finance and your budgeting, we can begin that investigation to see what is there as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Well, the first one, I imagine you and staff can do that. The second one, we'd be spending more money.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would just comment that for the administrator study, Todd didn't charge us anything, and our committee did all the research, so it didn't cost the county anything other than per diems, I suppose. But if you hire someone, it's going to cost, you know, one position worth of money, one person's salary worth of money.
Right.
I mean, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
I've done research, several times with other counties. Doesn't take a consultant, doesn't take a, $50,000 budget. You just got to pick up the phone, talk to people.
Thank you. But I would make the motion that we ask our administrator to do some research and planning and present it to us as an option. Do I have a second? My motion? Hmm?
Yep, I'll second it if no one else is seconding.
Well, you're right. What kind of research? And I guess that would be talking to other counties and, yeah. Have a centralized units. Yes. Who's making noises?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
a
David.
question. Would this be a separate initiative from the budget guidance here?
I think so, because it's not, we're not gonna have the answers to that specifically in the next 30 days, so. Or not
Thank you.
even 30 days, 24 days. I think we go with the recommended changes that Administrator Langrick proposed for now. Not liking them one bit, but then no one's going to like cuts. I mean, that's. Tough times, tough choices. Really no choices, tough times. Specifically, looking at this diagram or whatever we call it, are there things on here that, besides the things we've discussed, that you don't agree with or like changed?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
could we vote on your motion first and then continue discussion on the spreadsheet?
Okay. I made a motion and I had a second by Sean.
Yep.
To ask for some research to be done. And Mr. Evans said, well, define the research, and I think that was a good question.
Discussion.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Carroll.
Clint, do you feel like we have clear enough direction?
I think I have a vision of what you're after. My notes here is to do a study with other counties to understand what their staffing levels are and across the organization in regards to HR and for finance, and then to come back with potentially proposed models of consolidating.
Thank you.
Is that the vision that we have?
Yep.
And you'd have to find counties that have nursing homes, because probably about half of the counties don't.
Okay, we have that motion and we've had discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Yeah, I'm opposed to it, but I voted for it, so. Opposed to the whole discussion, but we're here and it's our duty to have this discussion, so.
Mr. Chair, do we want to shift to Pine Valley since they've been sitting in the room
Yes,
waiting for their,
Yes, we can talk about,
or not, if you don't care?
well, no, I'd like to.
yeah.
Okay.
So the three elements in there, there is a response back from Pine Valley, one back from RED, and then the mistaken name on the agenda, there is one back from Public Works. And those were brought forward just as a more of an advisory on this is what's the work that's being done as of right now, just so you can start digesting it. There was time you could discuss it, but I was not intending any types of actions for those today.
Well, you're here now, Tom. And you know what the original resolution, I don't have it before me, and it's been modified and changed. You did some research for us. I think the last go around, I think it was Mr. Murphy Lopez suggested that Pine Valley pay half, I believe, toward the payment for the facilities. And roughly right now, you pay a third. And the question was, can you pay half? Is that what you'd like to talk about?
If the committee chooses this is the topic you want to discuss now, I'd be glad to.
Well, I think it's valid. I'd like to hear it. Go ahead. You presented a nice report for us.
Well, I thank the trustees because we met on September 19th and discussed, and they've met obviously every month for quite a while and hearing financial issues, hearing staffing issues. And so they weren't surprised when our numbers showed that it would be very challenging for Pine Valley to commit to being able to have enough profits every year to fund half of the mortgage payment, which would amount to $741,000. You look at page 3 of our report that we prepared for you, the numbers show that Pine Valley has been able to come close to doing that a couple of times and actually exceeded it a couple of times. But going forward, since the COVID staffing issues have arisen, it's just been more and more troubling to commit to anything given staffing and the staffing's effect on occupancy. So our numbers going forward show that next year producing about $300,000, 2024 producing about $250,000, and 2025 $350,000. Those vary slightly due to either cost of labor or benefits used in the projection. Now, this is not to say that we might go into 2023 and have a year where census is able to be higher, staffing allows it. The state has been indicating that we might see the biggest increase in Medicaid funding that ever for nursing homes. So it's possible we could have a year where we would say to Administrator Langrick next summer, when we're preparing the budget for 2024, that we could put aside monies that would in fact reach this goal of covering half of our mortgage. Don't know, but that should be just known that each year would depend, and this isn't engraved in stone. We were asked to give a projection, and truth be known, Therese Deckert and my history has been to be conservative and to see what we think that we can, in fact, meet. Historically, the numbers have been better than we've predicted, and I would hope that that would be the case here as well. But it's anyone who has a business that relies on staffing knows that it's next to impossible to guarantee anything when you rely so much on staffing. I'll take questions. I'm sorry, there's so much involved in the background and get to these numbers.
That Pine Valley puts aside operating capital fund, for instance, did you show a cut in those when you prepared these figures, or are you trying to maintain those at the same level that?
No, and this committee has made that known throughout the years that it's beneficial that we continue to maintain our capital. So our projections show that we'd be putting aside that $35,000 to $40,000 each year to maintain that.
Because county relies on you maintaining capital along with highway. Because it makes our financial status look better, to be perfectly honest, and it's one that it's a prudent accounting procedure that should be followed.
Big picture issues that the Pine Valley trustees, this committee, the county board needs to be thinking about is that at some point, if there is a situation arise with occupancy that one of the households of the nursing home would have to be closed, we've done some number crunching on that to see what that possibility would look like. It's not pretty that we would lose a little bit more than we're currently. However, then at that point, all is not lost, because then you have an empty household that can be considered for some other use. And so that would have to be pursued at that time, and could be. Also, if the market allows, the campus was designed in such a way that if occupancy maintains now, where everything stays pretty good, and then in the future maybe we need to add on to it. The campus is designed in such a way that there could be an addition added to our assisted living area, which the assisted living area continues to be in high demand. So there are some big picture options going forward. We hope that we're able to continue to operate all 4 nursing home households as we have been and continue to, because the need is there. If there's something else that the committee would like us to do more research on in regards to this, I'd be happy to bring back more information at some point.
Comments, questions? Mr. Carroll?
Maybe some ideas on what be a reasonable use of that building should it become available.
You mean if the bad thing happened that
Right, right.
that we had to close a household, but then what? That's a little bit more report on that. Okay.
Mr. Murphy Lopez? Sean?
Yeah, so,
I'm going to ask you to take over chairing the meeting.
oh, I think we've lost our quorum once you leave, because I saw Supervisor Gacho left.
Well, I guess you can talk where I leave, but I'll be going.
Weren't these items for information only at this point?
Yeah, I would say,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
maybe things have changed. I'd like to ask Mr. Wendell's opinion. I'm under the understanding that if you don't have a quorum, even a discussion is not in compliance with the open meetings law. So I would like that to be that question to be resolved by our corporation counsel before we decide to continue to have a discussion. I do not think you can have a discussion according to the open meeting law. Again.
This is Administrator Langrick. I guess at this point, I would advise that we adjourn. If we had it posted more of a public hearing and a report like we've done in other meetings where it was kind of administratively led, that may be appropriate. But since we did have it kind of agended in the context of discussion of possible action, I would recommend we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I think technically we adjourned when the quorum
When
dissolved.
you quorum left, yeah.
All right, bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.